Welcome to Raconteurs-News.
This is Colin Johnson from East Coast Resistance, and you're listening to Raconteurs-News.
Good evening and welcome to Raconteurs-News. It's Thursday evening. As always, we've got a great lineup for you. My name's Andy Young, and as always, I'm joined by Jason Holmes. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Andy. It's very interesting times we're living in, aren't we? It's all kicking off.
Oh yeah. What's been happening today with you then?
Well, I mean, I've just been closely following the whole reshuffling that seems to be going off, and it's. I think Jeremy Corbyn slyly has played a genius game. I do. I think he's played a genius game with this, with the Brexit, and I think as well. I mean, I listen to commentators who say things like Jeremy Corbyn should have come out against Brexit in the first place. But if he had have done, we would have had all these shenanigans before the referendum, and the referendum would have become secondary, and there wouldn't have been as much concentration on it, and we probably would have got a different result. But as it stands, I think Jeremy Corbyn half-heartedly backed Remain, and then it's there for him to take. It's there for him to take, and I'm not a supporter of Jeremy Corbyn. I don't advocate him, but just have a look at the alternatives, and then ask yourself who's going to get us out of this. Who's going to help us? Because that's the thing. We need to stop doing this. Who's going to get us out of this? Because that's externalising power. What we need to do is we need to say who's going to help us. Who's going to be valuable to us to getting us out of the situation of being ruled by a bunch of sadistic paedophile protecting and paedophiles amongst them as well, MPs. This political class that seems to think that they know better than the British people. So I hope Jeremy Corbyn hangs on as long as he can. I hope he stays the leader of the Labour Party, because you can see the division that it's causing amongst the political classes. They've started stabbing each other in the back. Michael Gove stabbed Boris Johnson in the back today. Boris Johnson stabbed David Cameron in the back over Brexit, if that's what you believe. It's really interesting times.
Quite a circus, isn't it? Yeah. Well, on to tonight's show. We've got two guys on who've both been on. One of them's been on several times before when we were Enemy Within. One of them's only been on once, but was very well received when he did. So I'd like to give a big warm RN welcome to Rob B and Rob Freeman. Good evening, guys.
You first, Rob.
Hey Andy, you okay? Hey guys. Hi Rob, you okay?
Super mate, super. Nice to catch up with you again, buddy. And thanks for having us on the show, guys. Very much appreciated.
Thanks.
Me and Rob have been off the scene for a wee while now, earning some money, so it's good to be back and seeing as people still carrying on the fight.
Well, that's it. We always like hearing from guys like yourselves who are not just talking the walk, but you're actually walking the walk as well.
Yeah. And
doing some great work out there. What have you been up to lately then, Rob?
Which Rob?
Oh, Rob B.
Conundrum. The good-looking one. On you go, Rob.
Well, clarify. You're gonna have to say Rob F, aren't you? And then we'll get where we are. So, go on. Which one, Andy?
Go on, Rob F then.
Rob F.
Okay, that's me, I think. To be honest, I've been. It seems like I've been pretty quiet lately. I keep getting messages from people saying, "Oh, have you packed in, or what you're doing now?" And all it is, like Rob says, I've just had an opportunity to get a bit of an income together, so that's what I've been concentrating on. But I've still been doing a lot of other stuff. I don't know what particular topics we were discussing tonight, Andy. Was it about council tax, or is it a generalised thing?
When I spoke to Rob B earlier on, he did say that council tax was something he'd like to touch on. So yeah, that'd be a good starting place, I think, wouldn't it, Rob?
Sorry, I muted the background there. Yes, absolutely. It's not so much the council tax, it's implications of it and what it exposes. That's why I went for the council tax thing, not because I feel I don't have to pay anything, but it's what it exposes within the courts, within the system, within the tax structure. It's a real weak point, and we've got them nailed on it. It's just we need more people now challenge them correctly on it, or stand on their ground. That's the problem. But yeah, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I've withheld, not paid. I've withheld council tax for 6 years now, and a very simple question: who are you? What authority do you have over me? Can you prove it? And still 6 years later, I've had none of that.
Rob, can I just jump in there? Have you actually used the terminology withheld to them?
Yes.
Have you actually used that terminology?
It's in an escrow account. It's waiting in an escrow account. I don't refuse anything.
Oh, well, that's the point I was coming to. From when I very first started doing talks, I don't know if you agree, Rob, and you fellas, I've never ever refused to pay anything. No. I've never refused any demand or obligation ever once. I've never said, I'm not doing that, no chance, fuck off or anything. But what I've said is, especially if it's a financial demand, is prove that I owe that whatever obligation, financial obligation you're saying, prove that it's me who's liable for that, and I'll go straight away and pay it.
Yeah, I use that.
Do you agree with that, Rob?
Yeah, absolutely. It's basic contract law. I mean, just sort of step over here, Rob. It's basic contract law. When you're addressing someone, you're addressing the identity and the capacity, and it's the capacity people forget. Anyone can identify themselves. So when I'm talking to you guys now, I'm talking to you in one capacity. When I'm talking to my wife, I'm talking in a different capacity. I'm talking to the dog in a different capacity. I'm talking to someone in officialdom. It's a different capacity. And there's a lot of very simple case law, old solid case law backing this up. And it's who they are capacity-wise, addressing to who I am capacity-wise. And that's where they flounder. Yeah?
They always flounder, though. Any sort of questions. You see, do you think the problem is that the people that you're dealing with, the frontline people, the people that you talk to, they don't know anything at all. They're just given a script. Do you think that's the problem?
Yeah, the process monkeys. They're earning a wage. They'll do what they need to do, earn a wage and pay the bills. And a lot of them gravitate to those positions. I'm sure you guys will understand this. They'll gravitate to these positions of wearing a badge and having authority because they're genuinely nasty people. Quite a few of them are just genuinely nasty people who like bossing people around and like acting the tough guy as long as they're hiding behind some sort of facade to do so. If you get them away from the facade, they're complete jelly babies. But these people wield power, and they don't do it through themselves. They do it by proxy. Because, for example, say somebody from the council, some private company's taking over the council tax department, which is the case. It's not them that's coming to your door. It's not them that's causing the pain. It's not them that's seeing the damage they cause. They hire in thugs effectively to do it for them. So they're divorced, they're distanced from the actual end effect of what they do. I think a lot of them would revel in doing that as well. I think a lot of these people gravitate to specific jobs. It's a particular personality. I suspect a lot of them haven't got many friends either. Certainly ones I've spoken to. But I mean, there's a lot of good people in the system. Just keep their heads down, do their job, do their 8 hours a day, and they earn their wage. They're paying the bills like everybody else. And they've this psychological thing where they can shut off, go into work and cease to become the loving, nice person and become the employee. Then they go home at night and they can switch back into a new personality. So it's like every job's got that. I do that at work as well myself. During the day, I run building sites. I'm one personality. I go home at night, I'm a different one. So this is just basic psychology. But there's genuinely bad people out there. There was a report in, I believe it was the Observer 2 years ago, and I can't get it. It's offline now, and I've been unable to get a copy of it again. Where they were talking about how it was a parliamentary report. In Parliament, I've done so many FOIs now, and I've been unable to get hold of this report. I will get a copy of it. I lost it. I will get another copy of it. And it's where the Parliament was investigating the level of infiltration of organised crime in the City of London. Now, this isn't the trading floors. This is the police, the judiciary, the legal offices, all the clerks' offices, all the sort of the legal machinery of the City of London. And the parliamentary finding was it was so infiltrated by criminal gangs as to no longer fit for purpose. Now you know why that report disappeared. And I'll tell you, that is just one place. I guarantee you go to every single local authority, whatever they want to call themselves, around the country, you'll find exactly the same. They've been infiltrated by criminal gangs, Freemason gangs, common purpose, whatever. But it's different groups, gangs. I just call them all gangs gangs who've infiltrated for their own and in legal terms, unjust enrichment or unjust empowerment. And they will crush anyone that gets in their way, because you're not dealing with the law now, you're dealing with people making money.
You're dealing with criminals.
Yeah, I like the phrase Rob B used there when he said they're divorced. I like that, when they go to work and put the suit and tie on or the uniform on, they're divorced. And if you remember a few years ago, guys, everything became a department, didn't it? Department of this, department of that.
Yeah.
And if you look at the word department, meant meaning mind, and depart, it means to leave the mind, be out of the, so they're out of the minds, really.
Yeah.
Every department is a detachment from what's right, really. So I like the way you use the word divorce there, Rob. That's exactly what they're doing.
That's deportment, how you carry yourself is the same route. I mean, this goes into another area I talk about where we're actually under law of occupation, international law of occupation in the UK, we always have been. And I do talks on the subject, and I studied extensively on the subject. But you find that word department's actually a military term. And you know, if interestingly, for the people that are listening, to the guys that are listening to this out there, yeah, if you go into the government website and look up the cabinet, we used to have these ministers, all these reams of ministers. Remember the MOT, Ministry of Transport.
Yep.
Challenge anyone to find the Ministry of Transport. It's quietly morphed into a Department of Transport.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can very briefly touch on law of occupation, the clues to look for. But essentially, what happens is you get a sovereign country, sovereign nation with a sovereign legal system, sovereign government. And what happens is, through various means and clever shenanigans, they end up under occupational administration. So, for example, we surrendered to the EU, which was it was. We capitulated to the EU in 1972. We then came under a form of occupational administration. Now, what happens is, under Geneva Convention, they can't come in and replace, or they can't come in and shut down the sovereign powers. So they can't shut down the councils, the sovereign counties. They can't shut down the Queen. They can't shut down the sovereign parliament. They can't shut down all these different bodies out there who are sovereign. What they can do is offer a replacement. So for example, we've got these the sheriffs, the high sheriffs, and the lord lieutenants, the Queen, for example, all these different sovereign bodies. They're still there. What's happened is they've been disempowered, and those powers have been transferred to what's called a mirror body. So it's a body out there which mirrors the sovereign. So the occupying power will create, say, for example, a department which mirrors a sovereign department, and all the powers will slowly be taken over to the administration department. This is why it's interesting. Another clue about this is we're now governed by administrative law. Rob? Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Governed by administrative law.
Absolutely.
They're not even hiding it. We're under occupational administration. Now, I've written to every man and his dog out there at a senior level in this one. Paddy Ashdown and dozens of other ones. And the few responses I get back are, you can see these people are scared to even talk about it. They know we're under occupational administration. So I mean, this is a subject I could talk about for hours, but I won't, because this is what I would ask people to do. There's a very, very good book, and I've got nothing to do with this guy, nothing to do with his book. I don't make any money from it. But it's just I found it's a fantastic book. It's not a dusty textbook. The guy, he's called International Law of Occupation by a chap called Professor Ayal Ben-Veniste. I'll spell that. It's E for Echo, Y for Yacht, A for Alpha, L for Lima. Ayal. And his second name is Ben-Veniste. One word, Ben-Veniste, right? It's about 20 quid for the book. I promise you it's the best 20 quid you'll spend this year. Because you'll finish reading that book, you'll suddenly see the world in completely new eyes. You'll see the world, and all in terms of sovereign power. When I'm looking at anyone in any authority now, when I'm talking to you guys, am I talking to the sovereign person or the occupational administration person? For example, am I talking to you, the man, the sovereign power, or am I talking to the appointee who's working for the occupying administration, which you are because you're taxpayers?
Rob, what's the name of the book again, please?
It's called International Law of Occupation. It sounds dusty. It's a really good read. He explains the background to it. It's aimed at undergraduates, so he explains the background to it. Then he starts giving examples. He talks about Germany in the First World War, Germany in the Second World War, how they invaded Belgium, how the law worked, and how Britain used in the Second World War, how he broke every law in the book pretty much. We actually broke a lot more laws than the Germans did. And then it talks about Israel, it talks about Georgia, South Ossetia, it talks about the Balkans, it covers Vietnam, but he explains how these, and Iraq is the big one. Iraq, I'm sure, was a testing ground for this. What they needed to do, they needed to get a sovereign country and put it under occupational administration, citing, they don't say it's under military reasons now. They say it's humanitarian reasons. This is one justification that they can use under international law legitimately to take over the running of a country. So the military occupiers will come in, kick the crap out of the army that's there, whoever's there, right? Destroy the infrastructure, dismantle the government, and then as they pull back, they're leaving a mess behind them. So then behind them, the administrators can come in under the guise of humanitarianism and run the country because it's for the good of the people, good of the people. It's for the benefit of the economy. It's for the defence, well-being, and all this good stuff. Yeah. So they use this as a front by which they put. Now, if you look at our country here, I wrote to the House of the Parliament 4 years ago. I think Rob knows about this. I wrote to the House of the Parliament and I asked simple questions, guys. I asked very simple questions. And the question was, can you give me the job description of an MP? How many people out there listening to this now can actually tell me what an MP does? It's why the response we got back from House of Parliament was an MP has got 4. Or there's no actual job description from an MP. So what you're voting for them now? There's no job description, and we're voting for them. I think you should have a job description. But anyway, but I was told that there's 4 roles, priorities they've got to focus on when they're doing their undescribed job of an MP. First and foremost, the economic well-being of the state. So that's the City of London, the answer to. Secondly, the general well-being of the people, whatever that means on a daily basis. Third is party. Fourth is the electorate. And I tell people, remember that next time you're voting, you're 4th on the list.
Rob, just jumping in there. So, general well-being of the people and the electorate, are they classed as the same entity then?
Who's that, sorry?
You said general well-being of the people, and then you said the electorate. Are they 2 separate entities, or is that the same thing?
Yeah, two separate.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in this country can't vote because they're foreigners or they're underage
and non-voters, obviously, as well.
Yeah, so that they're not electorate. I mean, you're into trust law. When you start talking about electorates, you're electing a trust, which is what's just happened at referendum. Now, I look at things differently from you guys. I look at things in terms of trust as well. So the word elect is a trust term for the people that have read about in trust law. So what happened in the referendum was, under the law of occupation, we've given our confidence previously and under trust law to administrating authority to administer our trust, UK. Yeah. What happened was, under Geneva Convention, we can have a referendum to show a vote of no confidence in that body, that we've lost trust in them, and therefore they're under international law. They're then obliged to go away and appoint a new administrative authority which has the confidence of the inhabitants of an occupied territory. You start seeing things completely differently. So that's what's happened. We just gave a vote of no confidence. And I've not voted, I'll be honest with you guys, I've not voted for 6 years because I realise what you're doing. The only power we have, genuinely, the only power we have, the only right we have is as investors in a corporation. So if you're a shareholder or a stakeholder in a corporation, you have a right. The only vote you have as a shareholder is a vote of no confidence in the management. That's it. So if you're a shareholder in a big company, you can try and influence the company, you have no power over them, unless as shareholders you get together with the majority and give a vote of no confidence, which is what we did in the referendum. You see things differently now, yeah?
I had somebody trying to explain that to me last night, and it kind of messed with my head a bit. But they gave me a link to a website explaining the etymology of the word democracy and the root of it in ancient Greek, and they said it doesn't mean what you really think it means. Unfortunately, I haven't had time to fully study that. If I'd have realised you were going to bring it up tonight, I would have probably made time to look at it.
No, we'll go all over the place tonight. I'm sure we've all got stuff to put on the table. I'm sort of commandeering the conversation at the moment, but I'm sure we've all gone over the place. But demos has many voices, otherwise known as a babble.
I like it.
That's all, as many voices. We need strong leaders. Well, one thing we don't have in this country, I mean, go back to the referendum in more general terms, we don't have leaders in this country. We don't have any statesmen. I don't see one proper statesmen out there that I would put in the front to lead the way. And the problem is we've voted for Brexit, which I'm for, by the way, 100% for. The European Union, as far as I'm concerned, is an evil entity. I mean, it's corrupt as the day is long, and it's just a criminal organisation run by criminals for criminals. But it's who we've got now to lead the way, and I don't think you can see that the fiasco's going on in Labour and the fiasco's going on with all the political parties, all these different corporate parties out there, because they're all corporations, and I don't see one of them actually fighting for us. And I genuinely, if you study the Civil War, the British Civil War, the English one and the Scottish one, because the Scottish one was far more brutal than the English one. If you go back and study that, you realise you're rewriting history. And by the end of the English Civil War, what happened was the army got together and realised that the Parliament was doing a deal to compromise what the army had been fighting for. So the army met. 4 of them were executed by Cromwell for under military law for sedition or whatever it was. But at the end of the day, what we got at the end of the war was not what a Parliament had been fighting for, was not what the Royalists had been fighting for. It's the same as with the Happiness referendum. After the Civil War, the bankers then stepped in, who've been funding both sides, and they managed to force a compromise on everybody. And it's going to happen here with this referendum unless we stand our ground. I'm standing my ground. I'm not backing down. I don't trust political parties to fight for us. I don't trust anyone else out there to fight for me other than myself. I don't trust anyone out there to fight for the best interests of my family other than me and my family. And we should all be like that. We should all be steady looking at political parties and great leaders to look our way. There's only people out there anyone can trust is yourself. You know? So sorry, I'm on my soapbox here, but that's the way I look at it. I mean, every year what I do is I don't vote for a party. I send through a notice to the electoral commissioner, not to the local local electoral officer. That gets you this way you don't want to go. But I send a letter to the electoral commissioner, just notifying her that as head of household, every single member of this household wishes to record a vote of no confidence in any of the above. That's the only power we have as a shareholder. So that's what I do every year. I just vote of no confidence in all of the above. Until I get a job description from the MP saying the MP's top priority is me, you, and all the people out there, I'm not interested in voting, because the first priority is the economy of the state. That's the City of London. So there you go.
I wanted to ask you about constitutional law.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, it's my understanding, and I may be wrong, but when I was quite ill for a while in 1997, and I did law. I did just for something to do because I was convalescing. So I studied law, and I did A-level law, and I passed A-level law, and I was going to move on and do stuff. But from what I remember from that the European Union is fucking knobheads outside my house. Sorry, with the loud vehicles.
You're loud and clear.
Yeah, the European Union, the statute that wrote it into law is what they call a super statute, and that super statute can only be removed by a referendum of the people.
That's the Enabling Act.
Now,
the European Communities Act 72.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, so there was no way we could get out of it unless we had a referendum by the people. Now, my understanding of constitutional law is that when the people have spoken, that becomes the voice of the monarch, and that's the will of the monarch. Now, in order for them to reverse that decision, it's my understanding, anyway, from what I've been reading, and I could become miles off, and this is why I'm asking you, that they would have to declare a republic.
We already are.
No, but they'd have to declare the republic. I mean,
we are already. They have declared it, but we are. I mean, Tony Blair became a president, not a prime minister. I mean, prime ministers, a job of a prime minister is to sit as chairman of the board, and he represents to Her Majesty, the Queen. He or she represents what the decision of the cabinet is. We've got these. We're actually voting for parties based upon the leader now. No, you vote for the party. This is a presidential thing that's snuck in over the last 20 years. But I mean, an interesting one, if you go on the Royal website, again, this is something I did 5 years ago. If you go on the Royal website, there's a web page in there called The Queen and the Law. And in there it says the Queen's an EU citizen. I rest my case.
Rob, just jumping in there, Rob, I'm still not no one's actually clarified to me just exactly what the EU is. Does anybody know what it is? It's never been explained to me properly. Do you know, Rob?
I know what it's trying to be, but it's a quasi semi-autonomous state, and it's also also a non-franchise trade authority.
Like
So,
it.
non-franchise. This is an interesting one, by the way. This is snuck in from America, and this is what they're imposing. This is what the European Union openly says it wants to be. What it is they under our proper British system, right? We've got it's like a military structure, it's a distinct hierarchy. We know who to point the finger at, who's to blame, who's responsible, right? So what they've done is they want to sneak in stuff they know the public's going to be furious about. It's all about confusing and demoralising by people saying I can't speak to anyone, nobody in authority, blah blah. I can't find who's responsible for this. That's deliberate. Franchise government, and that's another subject. That's a really interesting subject. That's the most interesting word in English language, by the way, is franchise. But franchise government is where you've got that distinct. There's a franchisor, a master franchisor, a franchisor, franchisee, sub-franchisee. Think of McDonald's, and everybody knows who's in charge. There's real rules and regulations, and people are named. Non-franchise government snuck in through Agenda 21 from America, but non-franchise government is where everything's done by committee, and you've got state players, you've got private players, you've got investment players, you've got the what do you call them, the third sector, your charities and your NGOs and stuff. They're all on board in a committee, and there's nobody responsible for decisions coming out of those committees. Nobody, you can't point the finger and say that person or that specific group's responsible, because it's a committee decision, and it's a way of subverting democracy, and it's definitely a way of subverting accountability. There's no accountability in non-franchise government, and that's what the European is, and it's going deeper and deeper that way. So it's the non-franchise government is probably a new term for most people listening to this, and it's buried deep within very technical, boring books. I trust you. They don't want us reading this stuff. I'm the sad geek that reads these books. But these people are lunatics, absolute lunatics.
So Rob, that EU being accountable to who, to what body then?
European Central. Well, EU, I'd say, is accountable to the IMF and the International Bank of Settlement.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because it all comes back to that again. It comes back to that commercial aspect of who controls the
EU is a corporation.
Yeah,
exactly. We're all corporations. UK is a corporation. Great Britain isn't, but UK. There's an interesting. I put questions to new people that maybe have never heard this stuff before, and I put a few questions and I walk away. And one of the questions I ask him is, why is it whenever you go to the Olympics, we go there as the GB and not UK? Why is it you travel abroad with your car, you travel as GB and not UK? And that's one of the questions I walk away with, and they go, And there's no point arguing with people. There's no point trying. When I first started this, I'm sure we've all been the same. You're like some sort of, mad preacher, out there converting the masses, and people think you're crazy. And because this stuff, some of us find this stuff so overwhelmingly fascinating. We think everybody else is going to be fascinated with it. And the reality is, I'd say maybe 85% of people out there, they just want to stick a head in the sand. They're not interested. They're too busy doing their daily lives for legitimate reasons. Most of them, they're busy just surviving. But I'm fascinated how this works, and it frustrates me that other people aren't as fascinated as maybe we are on how to think.
But Rob, you said something really telling there, because I've known you a few years now. And 4 years ago, you would have said 95% of people bury their head in the sand. Interestingly enough, you just said 85%. So do you agree that people are slowly becoming aware of the whole situation in different sections? Yeah,
I think Brexit exposed that. I think people are genuinely asking questions. 5 years ago, they've been saying that nut at the bottom of the street, talking to me and you. Now we're not nutters. Now I've got people asking me what my views are, what my opinions are and stuff, And because I think people are waking up to the fact that it's Brexit. For example, my other half, she comes from a Latvia, an Eastern European country, and overnight they went from a big stable super state where invincible nuclear power, suddenly overnight, bang, didn't exist. No laws, no commerce, nothing existed. Now, we think that we've got status quo. There is no such thing as status quo, because anything can stop tomorrow. And once people, that's what people need to get their head round. You think this is the way things are, this is normal. There's no such thing as normal. things can change in a heartbeat, and you've got to be prepared for that change. It's only people who have been through the change of having to go back to zero and start again. And most Eastern European people out there will understand exactly what I'm saying. Their feet are on the ground. We're living in cuckoo land in UK because we've never gone through this sudden change. We've had some sort of stability here. So because we've never been through it, we're a bit more sort of naive. You speak to an Eastern European, they know exactly how it works. The police, the people, the courts, the police, the people in Nazi Germany and Italy, Mussolini's Italy, and the Soviet Union courts, the police, the courts, the judges, suddenly overnight had no power at all. And that's the legitimate question: by which authority do you act? Because that authority can disappear. That perceived claim of authority, that's all it is. Nobody's got actual authority. It's only a claim. That can stop tomorrow. And when people understand, and I think Brexit's done that to people, and it's realised, my God, we were sleepwalking along with this, what we thought was normal. Suddenly it's not normal. We're backpedaling, going a different direction. And I think that helps wake people up, because you start thinking things you'd have thought were mad a few years ago. So anyway, so that's my toppings. What's your views on it?
What are we talking about now then? Are we talking about EU or what?
no. Talking about waking up now.
People are definitely waking up. All you've got to do is you just take a little bit of a study of today. I mean, now today I've been to Blackburn and driving there and driving back. It's quite a long drive. Well, it's not a really long drive. It's a couple of hours. But I found myself, as soon as the news came on, I just turned it off because I just thought it's just nonsense. It's poison.
Yeah.
And I think what's happening is that I wouldn't be surprised if there was a huge false flag tomorrow. Firstly, because we're just after Brexit and they are desperate.
Yeah.
Absolutely desperate. Secondly, it's a Friday. So then they've got all the weekend to get the story together, which will come out over the weekend, which is always slow news anyway on the weekend traditionally. So if they, I wouldn't be surprised if they did something tomorrow. I can see that they are absolutely desperate.
Yeah,
they're desperate, and when you've got David Cameron in Parliament yesterday telling the leader of the opposition to go. He's sort of towing the Labour Party line, and this is the Prime Minister who's a Conservative Prime Minister, who's also a dead duck. He's sat here a dead duck.
He's the least Conservative Prime Minister we've ever seen. Tony Blair was more
blue rosette now,
Cameron. I agree with you totally. I've got to agree with your comments here. I mean, people are waking up now. It's fear's another driving factor. It's easy to go along with the flow as long as you can. I mean, it's the old Roman thing about bread and circuses. People are realising that. I mean, certainly I'm working down south at the moment. I was telling people down here how close to out and out revolt it is in the north, in certain places in the north. How close it is to people taking up arms, and genuinely people are angry. And down here they're like, no. Then the referendum results came through, and guys down here were saying, "You're right, Rob." I mean, areas which are like where I live, where my house is a absolute staunch Labour heartland. If they painted it's been red since the dinosaurs walked the planet. And last election, more people didn't vote Labour than did vote for it, the first time in history. And the referendum kicked them in the backside. Twice as many people voted Leave Europe as Remain. I mean, people are waking up en masse, but it's because they're fearful of the future. They're fearful of mass immigration. Whatever your views are on that, it's certainly a threat to us. Certainly for working class people. The Londoners are forgotten because London's a single economy market, housing, property. That's all London's based on. Whereas up north, we were thinking about job remanufacture things, make things, gizmos and gadgets, and immigration is driving down. It's hurting the working man. Then there's increases in tax, the perceived unfairness with corporations getting away with not paying tax, and people are getting hammered into the ground. The working class man and women are getting hammered into the ground. Families are struggling. We see these rich kids running around, and then there's a very good book that's called Treasure Islands by, the name will come to me. It's a very, very good book, and then the author's name escapes me for now. But Treasure Islands is about this is a guy done an expose on the offshore trusts and how many sheer scale of tax evasion there is in the UK with people who can afford to have these offshore trusts. Working class man can't. So we're picking up the tab, and people are aware of this now. People are waking up. They're seeing it. Stuff that we would never dream to be seen discussed in the televisions now been discussed. They're even discussing the offshore trusts and stuff now. It's all been discussed. So your average bloke or woman out there is now seen things discussed that weren't before. So it's good as it's a wake up call for them. But fear, anger. I don't like the word anger. Fear, frustration, outrage. I like the word outrage. Outrage. That's what you need to wake people up. You need to do that. But there you go. Sorry.
Oh, do you know what? I've got. I wish I'd got my radio mic. I'd plug it into my mixer and I'd go and answer the door because we've got some cancer research people going up and down, knocking on doors. I'd love to take. I've got my radio mic and I wish I'd got it with me. I could plug it in and.
You want to do a direct debit? Nope, don't do direct debits.
Yeah. I also noticed yesterday we had these so-called demonstrations, these pro-EU demonstrations that happened in London.
Boys.
And I pretty much had a quick look. And the one thing I noticed about it was wall-to-wall coverage, particularly on Channel 4.
Yeah.
And there was they appeared to be quite a lot of people there. But and they'd all got the placards and everything. But what I did notice was the police that were there were all in the high visibility coats and they've got the tits on their head. They hadn't got the helmet and the stormtrooper kit that they use when we're demonstrating against something that's gone against us. And I just sort of thought that I don't even think that people are buying that anymore. I don't think people are buying that. Ordinary people. And if it came down to, I mean, I know we've talked about a civil war or something like that, but who are these people going to muster up? I mean, the politicians are nothing but a bunch of, they're a bunch of nobodies, are they? They're not going to do anything. They won't physically do anything. They'll send other people to die and kill other people, but they won't do it themselves. And the people that are demonstrating, that are sad that we've left the EU, they're the sort of people that are, actually, I've stopped for this demonstration, but I've got to be at home for 8 o'clock because I've got to bath Horatio and Ollie. These are the sort of people that we're seeing, and it's so convoluted and so made up. And I think that people are actually seeing through that and just like looking and just saying, bollocks.
Yeah. Okay, well, just worth pointing out the word protest, slaves protest. Free men demand, instruct, and order. That's it. Slaves protest.
Yeah.
So
and essentially, if you think about it, last night those people were demonstrating, they were protesting against freedom, against being free. It's Stockholm syndrome on a huge scale.
It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. They're anarchists who want bigger government and more taxes.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. I walk away at that point. You're dealing with imbeciles. No, I mean, a lot of the people have got their hearts in the right place. They're these young. I would postulate. I mean, I'm knocking on a bit now, but I've seen the world. I've seen good and bad, and pretty much as we all have. When you get older, you see a lot more, and you experience a lot more, and it tends to sort of make you more mature in your views. But I mean, as an 18-year-old, I mean, I was a Labour. I was for Labour, and I was for saving the world, and saving the whale, and saving the because. You don't have the life experience to make a proper judgment. Also, it's a simple fact of psychology that when you've got nothing, you want to give everything away because you want everybody to give their stuff away. But as soon as you start accruing a bit of property and a bit of money and a wee bit estate behind you, you suddenly become a bit more conservative to protect what you've got. That's the simple fact of life. So these young kids, I mean, I sympathise with them. I know who they are. Their passion's admirable. However, they've been led by the nose by very, 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 very manipulative people.
We're talking about people that have been educated since the arrival of Tony Blair, and Tony Blair was the start of this downfall. I know but the real start, when it really kicked in, when it really, really went into, I mean, he introduced the Parliament Act, didn't he? Which and he also got rid of what is it?
House of Lords.
The clause. What was the clause that he got rid of? The Labour in the Labour Constitution.
Oh, I don't know.
I can't remember anyway, but he got. I think clause. It was a certain clause that stated that in their constitution or something like that they were clause 4. I think somebody's saying.
I believe that. Yeah.
It's about that they were a socialist organisation and for the people. So do you think that Tony Blair was is when it started to go turbo? Because we know.
No, I'll tell you a fact, right? Tony Blair is not a socialist; he's a communitarianist. Right? People may not have heard of this. All the government we have at the moment, Conservative, Cameron, Osborne, all of them, they're all communitarians. And a communitarian is they're hiding this from us because it's actually a soft form of, I don't use this word lightly, fascism. Right?
Yeah,
it's where
fascism,
the
communism,
socialism
Stalinism.
and the socialist states, the state and corporations work together as partners, and a form of soft fascism. And if people need to, I mean, for example, when Clegg and Cameron stood in the Green Lawn outside Parliament and announced they were going to do a coalition, they used through that little speech they gave, they used the phrase "common purpose" 3 times, and I took it as a huge sign. Common purpose are communitarians. But I mean, to say in a speech, it's not a phrase used a lot, common purpose, to be honest. I think I've used it outside these conversations we're having now. I think I've used it 0 times in my life. I'm pretty certain it's 0 times in my life. It's not a phrase used a lot. But for a politician to use that phrase 3 times in a short speech, he's sending out signals and messages. And we know our civil service is absolutely infiltrated at all levels by common purpose graduates, all 80,000 plus of them. So yes, communitarianism, and if communitarianism follows Agenda 21 policies as well. Again, we're in another area that's another show itself there. So there you go. But I urge people to look up communitarians and communitarianism, and then reflect on who and what politics or politicians actually, because none of them are conservatives, none of them are socialists. A socialist that owns 17 properties, laughs at people with white vans, gets a salary of £250,000 a year. Socialist? Where? I tell you what, the most honourable man. Sorry, I'll say this one sentence and I'll stand back and let you guys talk. Right, the most honourable man I've met in my life. And I'm more right wing economically than I'm left wing. Yeah, but I'm open to. I don't follow any political persuasion. But this guy, I met him when I just graduated up in Motherwell it was, and he was a communist, out and out communist. He'd been there. He was in his late 80s, and he was a very opinionated man about communism. He was actually on the board of management. He was actually the chairman of the co-op, the co-op cooperative shops. He was the only one that refused to get the chauffeur-driven limousine they offered to take the various board members to the annual general meeting. He got the bus. They all turned up in sharp, fancy suits and briefcases and stuff, yeah. He turned up in a scruffy old sort of 2-piece tweed suit that he'd had for years. He's the only man I ever genuinely respected his politics because he was honest with them. He wasn't prepared to sell out. I admired what his views were. I disagreed with him with pretty much everything he said, but I admired him because at least he was honest about his politics. And I mean, for the board of management of the co-op, he was the only one that refused to get a chauffeur-driven taxi. He took the bus. I mean, I've got to admire that. That's only I've always reflected that old guy. If I go, I'd like to say that I didn't sell out either. So there you go. And that's my property work. I'll stand back and let you guys talk. I'm dominating this. On you go, Rob.
No, I'm enjoying listening. I'm sure Andy and Jason are as well. Every time you speak, Rob, you take it to a different sort of depth that maybe some of us have not crossed. So yeah, I like to listen to you, mate.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, where do you want to go next then? I mean, do you want to go back over everything we've covered, or do you want to...
Well, if I could just come in there, we heard reports of, as soon as the Brexit finished, apparently, what is the EU was a trending Google search. Now, Tony Hurst and I got invited to appear on Chuckacelli's show at 2 a.m. and I think it's from Georgia in the USA.
Yeah.
And they were asking us what we saw it like because they were quite frankly quite confused. And Chuck brought this up and I said, well, I've really got to question that because although, yes, there are some people who are that uninformed, most people, even if they don't know the correct answers, they've got some sort of an idea of what the EU is in their head. Now, and I cited an experiment that a friend and I did with Google Trends. We typed in the same search terms whilst we were sat talking to each other on Skype and got entirely different results. We even shared screens so we could see what the other one had got.
Yeah.
And after about 4 or 5 searches, suddenly we got the same results. And then we went back to the original search that we did, and we got the same results for that. So what you get when you search on Google depends entirely on what Google knows about you.
Yeah.
So, yes, I've heard instances of people asking that question, but Tony sent me an article saying that it was actually searched 1,000 times on Google, not the suggested huge amount. So that just, to me, just shows that the media see an opportunity to exploit the division that this vote has caused, and to make that division much bigger and much wider than it ever would have been without their interference.
Well, Google's definitely up to their neck in it, manipulation. Absolutely. And I've got to question that Google's actually a black hawk themselves. Where did they get the vast amount of money and the influence they got to take a company nobody'd heard of 20 years ago to being what they are now? They don't do that without some major support. But I mean, for search engines, I'll tend to use I'll use a few of them. DuckDuckGo I find quite good. That's a good sort of independent search engine. GoDaddy's pretty good. Try to think of other ones. They used to use AltaVista, but that's no longer around. But yeah, no, there's a few of them. Google, I take with a pinch of salt, to be honest. I don't trust them.
Is the one called Start Page as well?
Start Page is a front, and they do it. The actual search you do is through Google. But instead of Google tracking you to your IP, if you go through Start Page, which I use, which is free, what they do is they submit your search through them as a proxy. So Google can't track where the search came from. That's why people use it. And they've also got a very good mail system as well. Use their Start Mail. It's very, very good. Yeah, Start Page is Google. It's a Google search. It's independent, but they use Google as the search engine.
Sorry, did you want to? You carry on, Andy.
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. What we're going to say is, I think that we're starting to see Babylon falling. I think this is the death knells of this cabal, whatever you want to call it. At least they're going to retreat for a certain amount of time, because they seem to have lost a lot of credibility. What do you think we should do with the media after we've got rid of these perverts?
Stop buying the papers.
But we need to do more than that. I mean, because there's TV.
Oh, starving with the cash. I mean, use ad blocker. Use ad blocker websites you want to support. Switch it back on for websites you don't want to support. The Telegraph is about to go under because they've just betrayed their readership. The Guardian's in absolute financial woes at the moment. All these newspapers are really struggling. People are now going on the internet. And what I like is, because of this show here now, the internet is offering a far, far, far more interesting, far more impartial.
Not as sterile.
Yeah, absolutely. It's less sterile, it's less manipulated discussions. I mean, I must admit, I go into various websites and I'll read the headline and go straight to some of the websites, just go straight to the comment section. And I learn more from the comments of some really bright people. And I get a chance to read sort of fairly heated debates. And it's some good stuff in there. You get the also trolls. But a lot of the websites you go to, it's the comment sections are amazing. And the fact that the level of discussion, whenever I feel a bit sort of, we're losing this, then I go into the comment section, I regain hope, because there's so many really knowledgeable, intelligent, well-formed, people out there having honest discussions now. And this is the problem with government, is shut down debate. The government in this country and all the West has shut down proper debate. There's certain subjects which, because government's decided, you can't talk about.
PC.
So they've slammed down. This freedom of speech is an illusion. They've shut down freedom of speech. There's certain subjects you can't cover. Whereas on the internet, as long as you're kind of careful, you can talk about it. I mean, if any one of you guys have got a major disagreement or something, do we resolve that by talking about it? And maybe we not agree with each other. We call a ceasefire and agree to disagree, or do we just ignore it? not talk to each other, and eventually end up coming to fisticuffs, because that's how it works. We need people talking, and the internet is allowing people to talk, which I find so inspiring. It's great. I mean, I might disagree with most of the stuff that's on the internet. I love trolls, by the way. Trolls are my heroes. But I might disagree with what people are saying on the internet. At least they're saying it. At least they're talking about it. And what's interesting is when somebody, for example, these social justice warriors or these third wave feminists, it's okay when they're hiding behind their little universities, they're hiding behind their little jobs and the law, but when they're exposed to the ridicule of the internet, they last 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And we need that. We need people put in their place. I mean, every now and again, all of us get some uppity. And there's a comedian in America, whose name escapes me just now, but Bill Burr, and he says there's nothing that focuses the mind on what a dick you are than a punch in the mouth. You walk away going, yeah, I was a bit of a dick there, And he talks with women. He says women don't tend to punch each other in the mouth. That's why they don't know when to shut up somehow. Because a guy would think, I'm going to smack in a globe here. And as he says if I had a free pass, I knew nobody was ever going to hit me. And if they hit me, they were going to go to jail. I'd be the biggest knobhead going. It's a fact. But yeah, we need people talking. And also we need people subject to ridicule, subject to comedy, subject to criticism, but in a good way, not nasty way. But ridicule is sarcasm. When my wife says she's not British and she admires the British sarcasm, we take it for granted. But it's not many countries has got the sheer dripping level of bitter, vicious sarcasm we have in the UK. And you can just be wrong one word, but we've mastered the way of just cutting somebody's flags out from underneath them with bitter sarcasm. And it's a good thing. We all, every now and again, all of us need to be a slap down and reminded that, you have your place in society. And a lot of the politicians, the problem with them, they've not had that slap down.
If I could just, we're coming up to the break. We usually play a tune on the hour. If I could just read out a comment from Unique Lee. Welcome back, Lee. I'm glad you've had a good break and you're nice and refreshed for coming back. He puts the comment in there, Revelations 13:13, and I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and the world wondered after the beast. He says, will the EU survive is one way of looking at it. The world looks on as the EU falls into its death knell, or does it? Rob Freeman, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I like the quote there from Revelations that Lee did there. But I think what we've got to really, I think Rob agrees with me here, what we've got to really start to realise is stop looking at the titles, the names, the labels that are given, EU or whatever it is, and what's underneath that label. I think what we've got to realise is that globally speaking, there's a relatively small number of people pulling the strings and controlling things. When you trace it back far enough, everybody else underneath them are just minions going, selling out basically for the money. And so the relatively small amount of people that have got this global control, it doesn't matter whether it's called the EU or whether it's called the CT or it doesn't matter what name they get. When they get beaten, they regroup. There's the same agenda right through. It has been for centuries, in my opinion. And all they do is they change the label, the title, the name of an entity. They change the public face of it. It goes underground and emerges as something else. So what we've got to realise is it's not the EU as such that we're trying to fight. It's not NATO. It's not the Conservatives. It's the overall agenda of a mindset of a small body of people that they're sidetracking us, basically. I know you're coming up for a tune in a minute, Andy. But we're basically getting mesmerised by the sideshows instead of the main event. And all this, to me, is us getting mesmerised by the sideshows instead of focusing on the main event. And the main event being, no matter what it's called, if it's generally not helping the people, and I mean people in our sense that we use the word, the average man, woman and child on the street, if any body or any body of words or any piece of legislation, whatever it is, if the people on the land who live on each landmass are not benefiting, then you can bet it's been implemented and used, controlled by that small group I'm talking about. So irrespective of the name, it's really relevant what they label it and call it. It's the overall agenda, the hidden agenda beneath it. And that's the thing we've got to change rather than the labels and names. Did that even answer your question there, Andy?
Yeah, that's fabulous, mate. Lee's even got a follow-up question for you there. He says, what do you all think the greater plan is now that the Shadow Ones have allowed a historical termination of membership, and why would the system allow this to happen? What can it gain? And he adds, wherever I read beast, my lexicon will replace it for system, communism, socialism, totalitarianism, and every other religio-political control system.
Yeah. Oh, isms is in the word jism. That's what I look at it. You know, I try to keep it from isms. I mean, I genuinely, there is no, but this is the problem. I get a lot of, and I know no disrespect to Lee out there. There's a lot of people I've met through the movement who are complete utter nutcase when it comes to conspiracy theories. The elite, they talk about the political elite. Wait, I hate that word. It's a new word that people use. I didn't use before, elite, yeah? They talk as if there's one single body making decisions. There isn't. There's gangs out there, all it's like a city that's been taken over by mafia, say, right? Different families will do a carve-up based upon different territory within the city, right? And they're constantly they don't want to go to war because that doesn't benefit any of them, but they're constantly nudging and pushing and shoving each other to try and get bigger territories. And every now and again, a little flare-up will happen that will quickly be put down, you know? And this was happening with the world. You've got, I would say, criminal gangs. You've got gangs out there, whether it be, you know, religious gangs, whether it be, you know, Freemason gangs, whether it be financial gangs, state gangs, whatever they are. Yeah? There's all different gangs fighting for control, and this is where we can be clever. Like, you know, the Clint Eastwood films, the Man with No Name. He'd walk into a town and be two sides fighting. He would play the middle, and he'd always win. And that's what we need to do. We need to play the middle with these characters. But yeah, there is no single body running the world, I can promise you. It's all different gangs. The European Union is not one single organisation. There's all different bodies and gangs and corporations. Banking corporations are fighting for control of the European Union. That and you start to see their things different again if you look at it from that point of view. So I mean, I think it's a bit nihilistic to say there's one organisation out there, one group of strange hidden characters sitting in secret meetings making decisions. There's thousands of them, and they all hate each other, but none of them want to rock the boat because at the moment there's a phrase called a common pathway, and they're all following that common pathway because it suits them at this point in time. But as soon as things change, they'll end up scrapping with each other. And we've seen that in Britain. Do you think Brexit is nothing to do with Bank of England flexing its muscles against European Central Bank? Do you think genuinely that's not what Brexit's about? The City of London about to be swallowed up by Frankfurt, and the City of London's engineered this Brexit vote. Why did the Tories allow the vote to even happen? Unless the City of London, who is a Privy Council, as part of the Privy Council, was pushed for this Brexit as a... I think they underestimated how angry the British people were. I do genuinely believe that. But this was the City of London saying to Frankfurt, fuck you, we're staying here. We've got our own little bit here. We're staying here. We're not letting you swallow us up. That's what the Brexit thing was about. We're just the bank account holders. That's all we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for that, Rob. Yeah, I like a bit of fuck you to the establishment. What I will say is in just over an hour's time, Dr. Rock will be in the house, and he's got something pretty good to follow on from this tonight. It's Dr. Rock's episode number 212, and it's Fraudulent Administration, Fake Legislature with Pete Kroll. And he says that Pete Kroll has explored at some length the fakery that passes for administration and execution of justice in UK PLC, and has a special interest in council charges, notably the council tax. A chance to catch up on Pete's 5-year personal interaction with his local council and hear what is transpiring as ever greater numbers of men and women endeavour to defend their homes and businesses by holding public servants to account. So that'll be on in just on the hour. So we'll go to a quick break. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. Stay tuned, folks.
We're gonna catch those rats. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna trap those rats and stick them in a zoo. Whoa, 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 yeah. and you don't know. You just see they're taking all your dough. Underspend it here, underspend it there. There's no accounting, so they don't care. Rats in the castle, what are we gonna do? Rats in the castle, what are we gonna do? We're gonna catch those rats. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna trap those rats and stick them in a zoo. Whoa, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah. Rats in the council making dirty bids, formulating plans what to do with your kids. Keep your nose clean and do as they say, or the family court will take your kids away. Whoa, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah. Rats in the castle, what are we gonna do? Rats in the castle, what are we gonna do? We're gonna catch those rats. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna trap those rats and stick them in a zoo. Whoa, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah. With the masons and the morons, who you gonna trust? The police and the courts, a system so unjust. Don't you think that you can run away? 'Cause they'll track you down to the USA. Whoa, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah. Rats in the castle, what are we gonna do? Rats in the castle, what are we gonna do? We're gonna catch those rats. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna trap those rats and stick them in a zoo. Whoa, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah. Now in plain view, we can see everything they do. Now it's clear we can see the day. We're gonna take them down and lock them all away. Whoa, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah. There's rats in the castle, what are we gonna do? Rats in the castle, what are we gonna do? We're gonna catch those rats. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna trap those rats and stick them in a zoo.
I'm David Halpin. I'm a retired orthopedic and trauma surgeon living in Devon. And I'm only too pleased to discuss things with Jason and Andy at raconteurs-news.
And welcome back to raconteurs-news. This Brexit, this council tax, this standing up and being counted Thursday nights. I've got some pretty good feedback on the first half. Everyone seems to be enjoying it. I got one particular message saying, kicking show, mate. So congratulations, guys. It's going down real well. Everybody's very interested to hear what you've got to say. So welcome back, Rob B and Rob Freeman. And where would you like to go in the second half, guys?
Well, I mean, just to wind back, Pete Crow, by the way, your next speaker, sound bloke. I know him. He's absolutely, listen to him. He's this guy. I've got respect for people that bring stuff to the table. Don't just follow the herd. And Rob Freeman, Pete Crow, other people out there, They bring new stuff to the table, and that's what we need more people doing, not just following the herd and listening to some guy on the internet. Bring new stuff to the table, and Pete does that, so sorted. The question we had a while ago, I try and operate as I try and look above the sort of general populist views and things. The European Union, the key word there is union, right? Now, the United Kingdom was formed under the Act of Union. You start taking a very close look at that word, you'll find that everything is a union. Every corporation is a union. A marriage is a union. The world is all, in every form, a union of some description or another. So much so they put it under international human rights. Then European Convention said you've the right to form a trade union, which is not one specific type of union amongst many. So that's what a union is. So that's the identity of the EU. We were talking about identity capacity earlier on under contract law. The identity of the EU is a union. Where it gets its capacity is under treaty. So it's a treaty organisation, the Lisbon Treaty. It's the Treaty of Rome as well. So it's a treaty organisation. That's what gives it its capacity, its authority, its power, is under treaty. So whereas John Smith is, an officer of a company, the European Union is the John Smith is the identity. The union is the identity. The treaty is his official office. What gives him that power? It was his capacity under contract terms. So it's worthwhile putting that on the table, guys. It's really important that people start thinking at this level and start seeing everything at that level of franchises, unions, treaties. Because everything is, you think it's the high level stuff. It's not. Even getting married. Even why is it when you get married, you go into the church, you get your wedding ceremony, you sign the book in the church, then you've got to go to the registration office to sign the registration book? Because one gives you your identity as a union, the church if you like, and the other one is where you're actually forming a treaty, a legal treaty, and everything boils down to that. But anyway, sorry, I do these strange paths I follow. But I see the world different from everybody else because I read this stuff.
Yeah, just jumping in there, I just want to maybe make a point for people that are quite new to this, because the information Rob B gives out is absolutely second to none. It's incredible. He's dissected every piece of legislation and all these different bodies. But for people who are quite new to this, it can be a bit overwhelming, can't it, Rob? Yeah,
What's overwhelming? People go on the internet and they read stuff on the internet, right? And they get confused because there's so much disinformation and complete nonsense when talking on the internet. I would emphasise, and I'm sure you guys will agree with me, I pull off the internet and buy some books.
Well, that's exactly what I was coming to now. My whole thing since I started doing talks and radio shows, it's been quite a lot of years now, is not being to specifically specialise on a particular topic. Is to for us, myself included, and I've been doing this now for probably all my life really, is to look at things like Rob just said from a different perspective to what we've been fed. What I mean by that is, if you look at some people, we talk about people awakening. Some people are all about the chemtrails, which is great, and that sort of stuff. Other people are the commerce stuff and the law that we're talking about. There's all sorts of different stuff. But if you look at the whole thing, even the stuff that you see in movies, the stuff on the news media, the whole thing for somebody who's quite new to this, and I'm talking even if they've only been sort of what we call awake for 2 or 3 years, it can be really overwhelming. And it just looks like the whole thing is against us. But to really simplify things, whether we're talking about law and commerce, whatever topic we're talking about, the whole thing for me is that everything is about is something that's natural or organic, for want of a better phrase, versus something that's synthetic or inorganic. And what's happening, right across the board from every single topic you can think of, including this what we're discussing tonight, is that whoever the controlling forces are offering us a synthetic alternative to what's naturally occurring. Now, that's right across the board, no matter what aspect you're looking at, from a spiritual point of view, right down to a grassroots. We're being offered, and it usually comes in the form of a service. We're being offered a service that we've previously been buying into. And this service has been watered down and diluted to make it look on the surface that it's for our benefit, but it's not. Anybody who's got authority over us has really only got the authority to serve us. When we're in that great word Rob uses, capacity, when we're standing in our capacity as just a man or a woman, a living man or woman, and that's it, with no names, no titles, just man or Pardon?
Beneficiary
is even a better term, yeah. When we're standing in that capacity, what's happening is we're being force-fed services. If you look at Her Majesty's Courts and Tribunals services, the police originally was a service. What else? We've got what's the military? Like Rob said, it's a service, isn't it? What happens when you go to a church? They give you a service. Everything is we're being force-fed these services that we don't really want. And what's happening now is that the services they're providing, not to get too spiritual, but there is a universal law of free will and of consent. So what's happening is because they know this are controlling forces, nothing on this planet can be forced on us, but it is being doing. So how is it being doing? I don't know what Jason was doing there, but it made me laugh there.
Sorry, it was the consent thing. I've been telling Andy this. I've been speaking with Andy about something, and I've said the consent thing is absolutely enormous throughout the universe, and nothing happens without it. Yes. And also, I did make a point that when Brexit happened, that was another layer of consent that was removed.
Brilliant. So just before it shoots out my head, nice one, Jason. So we know that universally they have to have our consent, and it is a universe of free will. Now this is right down to grassroots. So how do they circumvent it? And this is what I want to tell people who are quite new to this, and this is right across the board. How do they circumvent it? They circumvent it by doing this. First of all, they redefine words and meanings of words so that we don't really know what they're talking about. And that goes right across the board down to names of bodies, corporations, down to definitions of meanings of words. Like Rob says, there's legal dictionaries, military dictionaries, commercial. There's all sorts of different. So by redefining the words, first of all, we're all in a fucking state of chaos because we don't know exactly what they're talking about. So that's one way they get around the free will and the consent. And the second way is by redefining those words. We have to have choices. It's a free will, free choice. And what happens is by the redefining of all that what I've said on a mass scale, our choices then become limited. And that's the real key to how they got around this consent. Yeah. They can say to me, you can vote for Labour, you can vote for Conservative, you can vote for blah, 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 whatever. We know really it's a two-party race. But what's happened is by limiting our choices and by social engineering from all those, what we've said, media, newspapers, schooling, everything, our mindset is that so narrowed down now that the choices they're offering us, we choose one of three things, for instance. It usually comes in threes, and we've got a choice, so we think it's free will. But what we've not done is looked outside that range and realised that the choices that we're being given through these services that we don't really want, that are synthetic, we've got a choice of three or four things, and we think it's free will. But if we look outside, and this has been my whole thing, there are more than three choices. But we're so narrowed down and so dumbed down, and we've been sort of brainwashed, for want of a better phrase, that we think we've got free will out of those three choices when we look beyond the scope and there are many, many more choices. So in a nutshell, to get around the concept of free will thing, it's to redefine all the language through social engineering, through everything else, and then limit the amount of options that we've got so that we get to choose. But they've given us the options to choose anyway. And all three, no matter which one we choose, is part of their agenda anyway. So I just thought I'd throw that in.
And also, they seem to have redefined consent itself.
They've redefined a lot of words, a lot of terms, and this is the problem. People need to be really up on language, and this is where it gets. I mean, I get people come up to say, where do I start with this journey, Rob? And I'll say to them, first of all, by yourself, forget the law, forget all your stuff you've been doing, pay your bills, get yourself in the clear, and then start again. Go and buy yourself a grammar book, a high school grammar book. Rob?
Just say that again, Rob, because it broke up.
I tell people, go and buy yourself, forget all the nonsense with going in picking fight. You're not ready for it. Go and buy yourself a high school grammar book and spend 3 months studying that.
Yeah, that's a great point, because this redefining of language, people think it's set. It's not. It's constantly in flux. Every few years, new words come out and new definitions come out. And you know, Rob, I know you don't read Black's Law, but if you look at the really old Black's Law... I do. Yeah. I mean, that's just one form of definitions of words, as we know. But if you look at the really old, and same as you said, Rob, the really old books, you can see the same words evolving. And I equate it with the times of the mindset of the people at the times. So what we've got to realise is this redefining of words and terminology is constantly in flux. And a word that meant something 70 years ago has been changed maybe 3 or 4 times. And it's constantly been like that. Do you agree there, Rob?
Yeah, well, again, dictionaries, under law, a dictionary is only a professional opinion, an expert opinion. A dictionary is not conclusive, right? So the reason we're talking about dictionaries here is, when I first started this, everybody was reading the legal dictionaries, Black's Law, that's why Rob mentioned that, the Black's Law and, Barron's Law and all these different law dictionaries, right? I pulled away from that because I realised one word triggered me, the word vehicle. And what was the other word? I forget, there was another word as well, which the dictionary the legal dictionary didn't seem to answer. I thought that they redefined the definitions from somewhere else. So I went online onto archive.org and I just done a search for the word dictionary and downloaded every dictionary I could find. There's commercial, there's maritime, military dictionaries is where the real root of the words come from, right? Latin dictionaries, Latin dictionaries and military dictionaries, as far as I'm concerned, is the only dictionaries need to read. They've got higher authority than any other dictionary, okay? And it's amazing how many words you use on a daily basis are actually got another military meaning. For example, just for an example here, Rob, right? Who's in charge of local authority? The chief executive officer. 3 military words. Who's in charge of district? District's a military word. A district is a region under Roman law which could be patrolled by a troop of soldiers. A region is an area that can be patrolled by a regiment of soldiers. You start seeing things pretty differently when you look up these words in military dictionaries. And the military dictionaries are few and far between. I would recommend people really to open their eyes up here. Judge, court, law, they've all got different meanings under military dictionaries. And if you go on archive.org, for example, download some of the dictionaries from the 1800s, not the modern ones, they've been sanitised. Go back to the 1700s, 1800s, and read the maritime, commercial, more importantly, military dictionaries. You'll see things totally differently. And you walk into the difference between a military judge and a civilian judge is they call it a district judge. Remember, an area can be patrolled by a troop of soldiers, district judge. So that's a military term straight away. And if he's actually performing a purely martial function, it becomes a judge advocate. And if people want to be a bit interested here, you want to interest yourself, if you download the Judicial Code of Conduct, and now I've mentioned martial law, go back and read through a Judicial Code of Conduct again, thinking martial law. And what triggered that with me was I was reading it and going, why have they phrased that sentence in that strange way? Why have they used that word and not the word that we would expect until we think martial law? And Judicial Code of Conduct leaves it wide open for the judges to step in as judge advocates, martial judges.
Well, that's interesting. And to be honest, I've been quite successful over the years of protecting myself and my family from these corporate entities and everything else.
Yeah.
It's really interesting what you said there, Rob, because what I realised from a long time ago is what is law. A police officer or somebody, a bailiff or whatever, he'll say, or anybody from a corporate entity, he'll say, well, it's the law. And what is the law?
Exactly. There's the question they start every meeting with.
Yeah, I say to them, well,
show me a law can't be broken.
What is the law?
This is the point I'm getting to. Yeah, but you know something? What I realised really from early on was all law, any law, and we get people arguing about, it's common law, I stand on common law, and there's this law and that law, and administrative law, commercial, constitutional. What is law? Well, all law is, and all it can ever be, and it can't be anything else, is interpretation of words. That's it, or a body of words. That's all law can ever be. So when you get somebody who's gone into a magistrate's court and is arguing about council tax and is quoting such laws, the whole system of law is based on interpretation of words. That's why, Rob, like you said, that's why we have different. We've got military law, military judges, and all these.
Council tax is the military tax, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. So when you think about it, what's happening, even through legislation and everything else, even if they are using military style judges and courts and stuff, it's still only interpretation of words, and that's all it is. And the reason we can't win in these courts is whatever words we're using, and it may be correct what we're saying, is being interpreted differently and quite rightly by the other side. So it's such a vast array. How have I been successful? And how do we do this? How do we manage to fight them off or beat them? And it can only be this simple, and I really do things simply, and that's probably I don't know if it's a downfall or a gift, but I really simplify things, And all it can be is if I'm not causing harm and directly harming someone who stands up and swears that I've hit them or robbed them or whatever, if I'm not causing direct harm to somebody, like a man or woman or child who's living, then it can only be a breach of contract if I'm doing something wrong. It can't be anything else. So if there's no living man or woman that stands up and says he hit me, he robbed me, he damaged my property, he fraudulently took my money, if nobody living stands up and says that, everything else can only be nothing else but a breach of contract, no matter what body of law, so-called law they say, or words that they're interpreting. Now, my whole thing is prove that I had a contractual obligation in the very first place to show that I did a breach. I breached that obligation, and if I didn't, then you must leave me alone, because without establishing the number one rung of the ladder, the first step is that there's a contract in place and that I breached it. Then without that, the whole thing falls down. So how do you get round that there is a contract in place? And for me, it comes back to what Rob was saying earlier about titles and words. It's the name itself. The name that has been ascribed to me, well, it's not been ascribed to me. I, in the past, have voluntarily connected myself to that name, is not my name. If it's got a title of Mr., Mrs. or whatever, or it's written in block capitals.
Military rank.
Yeah, exactly. Fantastic. Military rank. It's not me. So as long as I don't associate myself with that. I mean, it's, as far as I know, and it's Crown copyrighted, it's not me. Yeah. And so if I don't relate to that, whatever perceived contract or agreement was in place is in that name, and that's not me. And as long as I'm not directly harming somebody, and if I directly harm someone, then I deserve some sort of punishment, and they deserve to be recompensated in some way because I've caused harm. But if I haven't, and I don't, and most of us don't, it has to be a breach of a contractual obligation. And without that contract being in place in the first place, we can never, ever get into trouble for anything. And that's how I kind of get around things. Kind of went on a bit there, sorry about that.
Well, yeah, just to clarify, I'm agreeing with you completely, by the way there. Just to clarify, so when we talk about the contract, there's another construct called the social contract. And this is what the governments create, they invent, they vest this entity called a social contract, which they can decide what it is and change it on a whim. And that's what the laws are there to defend and create and administer, is the social contract. However, does anyone actually know what the social contract is? It's an implied contract. Just by being in a territory. All the law, by the way, right, is a territorial jurisdiction. That's when you talk about the United Kingdom. United Kingdom is just a territorial jurisdiction. That's all it is. Germany, France, all the territorial jurisdictions. I mean, you're talking about consent earlier on, and the word consent is, I find that word fascinating, because some dawned on me about 10 seconds after I found out about the Brexit vote last week there, right? As most of us have probably done, Rob's probably done, you've written to the Ministry of Justice and asked the question, what power do acts and statutes have over me?
Yes.
And the answer he got back was the stock answer: acts and statutes are given the power of law, or as if they were law, with the consent of the governed. What happened last week was they lost the consent of the governed. And I challenge people now to go into courts and say your acts and statutes mean squat. We've now got an interim emergency government managing the country, a temporary administration in charge of the country. But last week we withdrew our consent. There's an interesting one to put on the table for people to think about and play with. Yeah, I mean, people are aware that you mentioned earlier on there, Jason, about constitutional law. You're aware that there's different levels of what they call, let's use law in the populist, simplistic terms, right, of the UK. Constitutional law is what's called primary law. All other subordinate law must comply with constitutional law, right? That's why they made the Human Rights Act primary legislation. It's become part of our constitution, so everything must comply with it. Yeah. Then you get secondary legislation, which is acts and statutes. Then you get tertiary legislation, which is your regulations, your orders, and all the other raft of crap they chuck at us. Yeah. But the constitutional law is what the only law we have at the moment in this country is constitutional law. As far as I'm concerned, the social contract was broken last week. The people voted to say it had been broken. And if we don't say something now, our silence will be deemed to be our consent, Rob.
So again, Rob, sorry, it keeps breaking
If we don't say something now, and we sit back and wait for something to happen, our silence is taken as our consent.
Absolutely. If dissent is not expressed, then consent's presumed. We are then consenting through acquiescence and saying nothing. Yeah.
That's all you got to do. Simply, you have to protest. Forget the banners. Forget the flags. Forget the slogans. All that crap. Right? What you do is you write a letter to your MP saying, "I withdraw my consent."
Absolutely.
Simple as. And an interesting one for people, right? I mean, I ceased to be a European citizen 18 months ago, right? Because again, I don't believe in political parties. Everybody's waiting for this vote and this Brexit and this referendum, and we're throwing your weight upon a party, hoping that for. I mean, the definition of madness, as Einstein says, is keep doing the same thing, hoping something changes. We keep voting for these parties, nothing changes, right? Why are people still European citizens? Because if you're a European citizen, you're in the system. You belong to them. Surrender European citizenship, right?
Wouldn't we by definition, if we were in breach of any of the European regulations, wouldn't we have by definition already withdrawn our consent to be governed by that?
No, because would you say in your passport? European Union. You're still a European citizen. Now, interestingly, I've been engaged with the Home Office for a few months now, and they do not want to talk to me because in the British Nationality Act 1982, 81, 82, I think it's 82, British Nationality Act, it offers various capacities you can have as a national of the UK, right? So as British citizen, back then before the Lisbon Treaty, British citizen, British subject, British overseas protected person, blah, blah. There's 7 or 8 different versions of them. British subject still in there. Subject, by the way, means subject to the law. Yeah? Through Her Majesty, but it's subject to the law. So I'm happy with subject to the law. Wow, great. I wish you all were. But so I've written to Home Office asking them, give me the form where I surrender EU citizenship and I get my I revert back to being a British subject. I'll be happy as subject to the law, not your acts and statutes, but certainly the law. And there's no forums. Excuse me here. So what you do is the most important document anyone can write is what's called a revocation of power of attorney. And again, this is really meat. This is meat and 2 veg. This is the bare bones, right? When you push all the noise and filter all the background crap that's happening, you'll find, and Rob is aware of this, power of attorney is absolutely key to everything. And the government is acting as your power of attorney because they've started doing it. You haven't revoked those powers. You can do if you get the Power of Attorney Act 1971. Helpfully, in the back page, they've given you a template to use for a appointment of power of attorney. Right? You can change the wording of that to revocation of power of attorney. You want to laugh, guys? Get that done. Take it down to your solicitor. Get a £5 it costs to get him to just witness it. Yeah. That you are who you are, you prove who you are, whatever that, there's a whole argument there. But anyway, take your driving license, passport, whatever crap you got down there, get him to sign it for a £5 and then send that through. Revoke Parliament's power to present you, to be your attorney, to have your powers of attorney. What you can do then is reappoint them under limited powers of attorney. You have the power to do this. Absolutely have the power to do this. Absolutely. And nobody can stop you doing it. So what you do is you reappoint them again under limited power of attorney. And I know this is maybe a bit heavy for people, right? But it's actually very, very, very... Rob, is this simple or is it difficult? Seriously.
It's really simple. Really simple.
Right. I'm in the pub. Here's to put things in perspective. I know we're talking big terms here. I'm in the pub. Me and you are having a pint of beer. And I say I'm going to the toilet. Can you just look after beer for me? Yeah, no problem. And I leave. I've just appointed you as my power of attorney in charge of that beer. So if anyone spills it, it's up to you to replace it. You're responsible for it. So I've created a trust, but you've appointed you as my power of attorney in that respect. So if someone tries to steal my beer, you'll advocate in my behalf that that's that guy's the toilet beer, blah blah blah. So power of attorney, before you become age of consent, your parents are power of attorney over you. Then when you get your national insurance number, the insurance company, i.e. the government, steps in and you give a power of attorney. Power of attorney is huge, guys. And the most powerful document you have in your arsenal is behind affidavits. Affidavits is up there as well, actually, is revocation of power of attorney. Because that's not legal. That's equity. They talk about law. There's law and then there's equity. Equity is infinitely more beautiful, is infinitely more precise, is infinitely more preferable to the law. Because law is whatever they make it, so that's a Roman term. Equity is based upon conscience. What's right and what's wrong. the law's based upon whatever they decide it is on a daily basis. And if the court's just based upon equity, we'd be much happier in this country. But equity doesn't suit the guys running the show. They want law. So there you go. But do you want to talk about council tax? What are you going to do that now?
Yeah, go on. Yeah, give us a little bit of council tax.
Right,
Andy, I think your mic's off, mate.
Right, okay. Again, talk about the military stuff, right? Just to put people in perspective, because people are confused what it actually is, yeah? And I mean, me and Rob here have done a lot of research on it. Rob brought a lot of fantastic stuff to the table. But if you go online and you look up the Joint Services Manual, now Britain used to have Pax Britannica. It's get its own system of governance under military rule. So if we were in foreign countries, we were governed by our British rules of conduct under wartime, right? Defence of the Realm Act. But anyway, more recently, 2004, because of Iraq, yeah, we changed the goalposts. So previous to that, the Navy, Army, Air Force all did their own different things, different rules of conduct. However, 2004, they combined them and they called it the Joint Services Manual 2004. I would strongly urge people, it's a real eye-opener. You go online, download it for free, the Joint Services Manual 2004, okay? And jump straight to the section on occupied territory. And I won't waste the fun for you. When you're reading through it, think of UK today, as if that's the UK, and you'll go tick, 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 yeah? But one of them is, the occupying power has the power under international law to levy a local tax to pay for their administration. This is some people haven't heard of. This is probably new to most people out there. But then this is why they can do what they want, when they want, how they want, because they're claiming necessity under international law. So that's how they're levying council tax. That's why these judges are doing their own thing, because they're interacting as judge advocates, like district judges. But anyway, so that buries that. Also, Joint Services Manual 2004. It's a good read, really good read. But jump straight to the section about occupied territories. This is how Britain manages occupied territory. If you think of UK just now as being, or Great Britain has been an occupied territory, you realise that's the manual for governing this country as well. Anyway, the council tax. I was in court last year. I'll just give you this and I'll hand over to Rob. I was in court I'm just bored with them now. I'm just bored with them, genuinely. I've just stopped. I just won't work with them anymore. I've tried to reason with them. I've offered them all sorts of deals. Been all through the game. Been in and out of these courts. Started off getting in with 3 foot thick paperwork with big intense legal arguments. And you realise under the Magistrates Courts Guide, which is what they're governed by, it says in there that the council, if offers its case, they've won the case. There's no point in you even talking. You can't even. You're going in there. The fact they're giving you a room is just a theatre. You're in there barking like a dog. If the council presents its case, the judge is instructed by the Magistrates Courts Guide to find against you. So anyway, that's that. Now I went into the last hearing, and what they did do is they put me between two criminals, criminal cases, thugs and whatever, rapes, or God knows what else was happening. And then they put me in and another chap, and then it was all criminal cases. So I was in a criminal court, with a coat of arms on the wall. So I started off effectively by asking the judge what jurisdiction we're under. And he hummed and he hawed and he didn't know. Cut a long story short, he didn't know. He started saying the Magistrates Court rules. What are they? They don't exist. There's no such thing as Magistrates Court rules. And that's not a jurisdiction. Are we either under civil? And I say this to the judge. We're either under civil law governed by civil procedures and rules. We're under criminal law governed by criminal procedures and rules, none of which have been followed here, or we're just making shit up as we go along. And then people get all lawyers in the room, they're all giggling behind me. The room was full of these lawyers for your cases with giggling and stuff, And the judge was definitely, he seemed like a decent guy. He was definitely floundering. So I says, well, he says, if you presented a case, I can. I don't know what the rules and procedures are. I don't know what the jurisdiction is of this hearing. I don't know what the rules and procedures are. And that's what people need to be asking for. What jurisdiction is this? And what's the rules and procedures? Because human rights law, right, much as I hate it, human rights law says you have the right to a fair and impartial tribunal hearing. Surely, key to that is you must know what bloody jurisdiction you're under so you can start defending yourself. If you don't know what jurisdiction you're under, you don't know what rules and procedures you're following, which they're making up. The council makes up their own rules and procedures, right? So you've got the actual accuser making up the rules and procedures, and they're holding the hearing under the theatre that this is some sort of legitimate entity. It's not. So the judge could have floundered there. So I turned around and challenged. I said, well, I'm going to challenge this the same way as I've been challenging for the last 5 years. I need this guy over there saying he's the council, let's call him the council, to prove his authority. That's all I want. Just him to prove his authority, to demand the money from me. And the judge turned around and said, I'm quite happy with his authority. And I said, under what? I said, so I was under the impression that under a hearing, the defendant had the right to challenge the accuser. And the whole point of a court was that it was a defendant's court, or, you know, the respondent's court. And my job is to question. It's their case has been under question. Not my guilt or liability. It's their case. It's supposed to be in this court being challenged. That's the whole point of the court. To hear their case, to hear the evidence. That's not happening. You've just decided based upon zip evidence that they are who they say they are, and yet you're asking me to identify myself. So, I mean, the judge was absolutely floundering at that point. So I say to him, I says, well, at this point, sir, and I promise you I said to this, right? At this point, sir, I say, see a coat of arms on the wall. Does anyone in the room get a blanket or a screwdriver? He's like, why? Big stop address the room, contempt of court. And I says, great, contempt under. We'll find out what jurisdiction it is. Do me for contempt. Please, I'll find out what jurisdiction we're under then. So he backed off at that point. I said, I want either that coat of arms taken off the wall or covered with a blanket, because our sovereign lady's eyes shouldn't be poisoned by this thing happening here. Oh, sorry about this, guys.
It's good.
The other half telling she was fun, telling me she loved me. No, so so I said I need that covered up, and there was fluster and panic. And I can tell you now, two people who are not in they're not public, right, have already done this in the courts, and one of them, the Justice Clerk, went in with a ladder, stopped the hearing, walked in with a ladder, saying the word, unscrewed the coat of arms, and put him in the wall outside the room. They know what's happening. The other one, the Justice Clerk came in from outside, another Justice Clerk came in and covered the coat of arms with a blanket. They know the sheer scale of the scam that's taking place here. There's people in the system, good people in the system. Well, I demanded the same thing. And the judge is floundering. And here's the killer with this one, by the way. I used to go in with 3 foot deep worth of paperwork. I went in with 2 bits of paper this time, right? I just question who they are. But I said I'm not refusing. This is the charge here, or the case against me is refusal. This is what Rob was mentioning earlier on there. I've refused to pay nothing. I've declined, and the money's held in an escrow account until such times as I'm allowed to do my due diligence as required by criminal law. Right, I'm required to do due diligence because it could be money laundering, could be all sorts going on here. And if I don't check this, I'm liable for it. So I'm actually complying with the law by questioning who they are. They can't prove who they are. So, you know, if that was a double glazing company, we'd walk away from them. But you're saying anyway, blah 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 blah. So, so the judge says, well, where does this take us? I says, well, next one, sir. I says, can we ask the council what the guy from this supposed council is claims the jurisdiction he's pulled us under? And he said, Magistrates Courts Act 1980. I was sitting there, I couldn't believe he handed me the gift, right? So he said the jurisdiction is the Magistrates Courts Act 1980. That's actually authority, not a jurisdiction. But anyway, niceties. He's not the brightest guy in the world. He's gone grey since he met me as well. Anyway, so the judge, so I turned around the room and just addressed the room full of lawyers, and I had like 6 or 7 witnesses in the public gallery as well as all the other people there. I says, can the room just recognise? I says that can the public just recognise that the guy from this chap here, supposedly representing the council, has stated the authority by which he's acting today as the Magistrates Courts Act 1980. At that point, the judge is banging the table. Stop addressing the court. I said, I just want to recognise, sir. I says, he stated it. I want everybody to hear what he said there, so there's no misunderstanding. So I pulled out one of the 2 bits of paper I had, right? And I says, I passed up. I says, can you read that? And he didn't want to see it. All 3 times offered it, as you do 3 times. So I offered it 3 times. The Justice Clerk sat there silent throughout this hearing, by the way. She had dropped this judge in, and I'd love to be in a fly in the wall afterwards, right? He refused to see it. I says, let me read it to you then, sir. I says, it's the Magistrates Courts Act 1980, which the council have said is the authority here. I believe it's section 125, states that where a single justice is sitting on a hearing, civil hearing, he cannot issue a liability order for more than £1. I says, this case before you, this case is a criminal thing, but anyway, this case before you today is for £999. You don't have jurisdiction. And he's like, well, where do we take it from here? So I said, well, I'm comfortable. So I made myself comfortable in the seat. I'm comfortable anyway. I said, so you guys sort it out. When you come back and tell me what bloody jurisdiction we're under, I'll go home. So, I mean, they're all sitting looking at each other. And it's nailed. There's nowhere to go. So I says, can I just point out at this point, sir? I says, you are an absolute flagrant breach of my human rights. I says, under human rights, I'm entitled to a fair and impartial tribunal hearing. I says, what's happened here today is tribunal hearing by who's military. A tribune comes from Roman law, and a tribunal hearing is military law, by the way. But anyway, so
yeah, Rob, you still there?
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, you're still there. We can hear you, Rob.
Okay. So I say what's happening here, sir, is a flagrant breach of my human rights. I said, can I just read you through the preamble of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights? And I've got it here. Just bear with me a second.
Did you want to jump in there somewhere there, Rob F?
Sorry, mate.
I was just saying, did Rob F, did you just want to jump in there and make a point?
Yeah, I did actually, but it broke up, so I thought Rob had finished. So yeah,
but just this one point, then we can
go on, mate. Yeah, no problem.
So I turn to the judge at that point. It says under Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it states that I've got a bad copy of it here. Right, it says the freedom from fear and want has been proclaimed as the highest aspiration of common people. Now, for people who don't know, it's the preamble of any document is the most important part. That's the most important, because all the rest of it must comply with the preamble. It says, whereas man is not to be compelled to have recourse as a last resort to rebellion against tyranny and oppression, and human rights should be protected by the rule of law. Quite clearly, the judge hadn't followed that. So at that point, I said, sir, I'm in rebellion. And that was I walked out at that point. And I just ignore all paperwork now. Just ignore everything. And it's that simple, guys. So they stated to me in court, magistrates, how many people go to court and ask what jurisdiction it is, and for a copy of the rules and procedures? I tell you what, you want to see panic in people's face. Walk into the court, walk in just on any day and ask for a copy of the rules and procedures governing council tax hearings. And stand back and watch the show. I promise you, it's that simple. And you're entitled to have it. Of course you're entitled to have that. Civil laws governed by civil procedures and rules. Criminal laws governed by criminal procedures and rules, right? Very strictly so, right? So you're entitled to, with the council tax hearing, what's the procedures and rules? If they can't give you that, you don't go. Just decline. Write to the court, write in response to the summons, and just say, I'll decline to attend this hearing until I get a copy of the rules and procedures. Certified copy of the rules and procedures. You want certified. Because until I get that, I can't present a defence. Bang. You're never go in court again. For council tax, you'll never go in court again. Any of these administrative courts, you'll never go in them again. And that's you withdrawing your consent, by the way. So, sorry, Rob. Oh, yours, mate.
No, it's no problem. Going on that thing, what you said there, criminal against civil. And it's impossible. It's absolutely impossible to be locked up for non-payment of council tax. Yeah. The simple reason being it's not a criminal offence. Yeah. And so, like I said, I make things really simple. And I don't go to court over this stuff anymore now. But in 2013, December 2nd, I actually got a new position in the council. This lady who had a new position sent me a financial obligation, in a name similar to mine, saying if you don't pay X amount of money within 7 days, we're going to go for a committal to prison. Well, that was in December 2013, and look where we are now, and no one's ever been. And I've just posted something in the chat. Sorry, mate.
It's all bluster.
Yeah, well, I've just posted a link in the chat room, and this is how simple. This is why at least you can never get a custodial sentence for non-payment of council tax. I don't know why people have. I've just posted there a link in the chat room there, and it's about magistrates' courts. And I've said this on air before, but I really want people to look at this. So this is the role of magistrates in a court. And if you scroll down there on that link I've just put in the chat room, my scroll's not. It says who are magistrates? Magistrates in the criminal court. They can deal 95% of all criminal cases are dealt with magistrates. Brilliant. Magistrates in the youth courts, blah, blah, blah. And then just below where it says youth courts, if you look carefully, now this is on the judicial court website, the magistrates, it says magistrates civil. Although most magistrates deal with criminal work, they also decide many civil matters, particularly in relation to family work. Magistrates' civil roles include dealing with cases such as non-payment of council tax.
Yeah.
Well, there you are. It's on their website.
That's
So,
what was guide as well, actually.
Yeah, and it's right there on the whole page. And so what I'm saying is, it's a real fight, as you know, Rob. If you actually go to their places of those meetings they have, those unlawful administrative hearings they have, it's really difficult to tie them down to what jurisdiction. And I think if anybody does go, and I wouldn't ever recommend it, if you can tie the magistrates to admit that they're acting in their capacity as a magistrate, and it's real simple, because if you say to them, are you acting, all three of you, because it's usually three, are you acting in your capacity as a magistrate, they're going to say yes, aren't they? They're not going to say no. And straight away, I've even got this printed out and sent it to people. You take that in, and so it's purely a civil matter. You cannot get a custodial sentence, because by their own words on their own website, it's a civil matter. And it gives the examples such as non-payment of council tax. So straight away, you've brought a criminal element away by asking them what capacity they're in, and they admit freely that they're acting in the magistrate capacity. So straight away, it's become a civil matter and not criminal, so that's good. And then it goes back again to, and I've done loads of preparation now, and I don't really, they don't bother me much, these people. Every year I get an automated bill, and then I send my bill in, and it all goes quiet, and that's it for another year. But it purely brings it back to civil, and once it becomes civil, again, it has to be a breach of contract. I know it might sound really simple, but this is how I operate, and it's worked every time. So if you have to go to one of these horrible places because you feel you're going to be arrested and locked up, it's tie the magistrates down.
You don't have to go. I'll talk about it, but you don't have to.
No. Okay. Well, I'm saying if people, in fact, you're coming after this, Rob, but if people feel frightened and they feel like they have to go, and you don't, you're right, because I won't ever go. Tie the magistrates down to what capacity they're in, and have this printed out and just show them, and it becomes a civil matter. And then they've got to prove that the liability came from some sort of contractual obligation that you've breached. So, yeah, back to you, Rob.
Yeah, absolutely. You just made the key word there. People are frightened to go to the courts. That's why you don't go. You write to the court and you say, I'm too frightened to go. Simple as, I'm too frightened to go. You guys fucking terrify me, right? The police, your security guard, the bigger steel building you got, your uniforms, fucking terrifies me. Do the quickest way to kill a case. Write to him in advance and say, I'll agree to everything you say.
Say that again, Rob.
You write to him in advance and just say, I will, because I'm terrified of you guys, I will agree to everything you say. I'll say yes to any question you ask. You've just killed the case. You've just killed the court hearing.
Well, you know, Rob, I don't know if Andy and Jason agree, but we could do coming back and do another show, because I've got some fantastic stuff, and I mentioned this to Andy last year, just briefly, because I'm conscious of the time. Mm-hmm. I've been helping a close friend of mine in a High Court case. And it's been going on 3 years now, but we actually filed in High Court. Just checking the time now, so I'll be brief. We actually filed in High Court in March 2015. We've had one hearing so far. We've got another one in October, and it should be cleared up by probably the first 3 months of 2017. Now, this is a huge claim. This, in a nutshell, he was getting bullied by some people. He worked for a big corporation. He was getting bullied. He made a complaint, and before we know it, they finished his job, but he got signed off because of all the stress. He got signed off suffering from depression and anxiety. Anyway, to cut a long story short, with me helping him for so long, and I've been helping him for 3 years now, but we only filed just over a year ago, it's opened a massive avenue of different stuff that I never would have researched. And without giving the game away too much, and I know, Rob, this will really appeal to you, I've been using some elements of that case to help other people with council tax and different stuff. And we've not got the result yet, because I was going to come on to Andy's show and talk about it when we've won. I know we've won. We've already won. But they've just not officially given us the result. They're trying to string it out. But the whole thing, and one of the key elements to this is, believe it or not, Rob, and it may resonate or it may not to you, is health and safety.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Primary legislation. Yes.
Well, let me tell you.
I've used that for 5 years. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's been swept under the rug a little bit. We think health and safety comes under whatever law it is. I can tell you now, health and safety is above any law, any law possible. And I'll tell you why. What body of people, right, can walk into any industry? They can walk into Parliament, they can walk into hospitals, they can walk even into the military and shut it down. And you know, Rob, from your career over the years, they can shut it down, can't they? Yeah. And because it's health and safety. And the reason...
People do the implied right of access. nonsense they put in there with applied rate. I use health and safety implied rate of access.
Well, let me just tell you. I'll tell you briefly. Maybe this is for another show. And I've really developed this, and it makes people go away instantly. Everyone's gone. It doesn't matter whether it's council tax. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
It's health and safety, right? There was an act, health and safety. Get this. And I've never seen an act like this. You may correct me, Rob, if you've seen it. Have a look at, and I've mentioned this before, Health and Safety at Work, etc. Act 1974. Now, it's got the word in the title, etc. Okay, so I started looking at this for my friend's case. And what I found out is health and safety is above any law, and it has to be, because it's mirroring that universal of do no harm. You can't harm another human being and get away with it. And I can send you some information on this, Rob. What I found out is that act is, people think Health and Safety at Work Act, that's what it's called, and it's never been changed since 1974, is to protect employees from employers for good conditions, which it is. But the reason it's got the word etc. written in it is because any corporation that's dealing with, it has to look after its employees, but if its effects or its actions or anything it does, it also goes to members of normal people on the street. And this is the key. Pardon?
Yes.
And this is the key to it all. So what happens is there has to be a risk assessment whenever you're approached by somebody. Okay, the sections of that act, and I can post it in the chat room. Have a look at 2, 3, 7, and 37. Okay, two of those are really applicable. 2, 3, 7, and 37. They're the sections that you need. Okay, this is massive. I've got rid of everything through health and safety. And what it is you only have to. You don't have to be harmed. All you have to do is be put in the position of a potential risk of harm. Now, it doesn't clarify what harm is. Harm could be physical. In my friend's case, it's physical and mental. It can be financial. It can be spiritual. It can be anything that infringes on your beliefs, rights, freedoms, whatever you want. And so you only have to be placed in the potential risk of harm. That's it. Okay, so I'll do it really briefly. Any corporation now, I've helped loads of people, say it's me, corporation approaches me, says this, that and the other. Okay, I now am put into a potential risk of harm. It could be financial harm, it could be whatever. What has to be done, whenever a potential risk of harm has been identified, a risk assessment has to be instantly provided. Okay, so you can tell the opposing party, the corporation, that you've now been placed on a potential risk of harm. They need to go away and provide a risk assessment. Okay, if they don't do that, we can then provide our own risk assessment. Now, through that risk assessment, if they provide a risk assessment, they've also got to, it comes second-handed as well, two-tiered. Not only have they got to provide a risk assessment, they've also got to present what's called, it's called a RAMS, a risk assessment method statement, which shows how they arrived. Okay, so what basically in a nutshell, maybe we can do this on another show, is whenever you're approached by...
We need another...
I've got some in-depth stuff, Rob. This for me is gold, and that's what I want to talk to Andy about. Whenever you, excuse me, because of the etc. in the act, any corporation not only has got to look after its employees, it's also got to look after people on the street. If its actions are placing people on the street in a potential risk of harm, a risk assessment has to be done. Okay, if they won't do it, we provide our own risk assessment and our own method statement, risk assessment method statement. They have to go away and reevaluate. And this is the beauty of it, and it's worked for everything. And I'll shut up now. But if anyone wants to look at it, in fact, I'll put it in the chat room. But the sections are 2, 3, 7, and 37. Those are absolutely brilliant. Those 4 sections. So yeah, I'll hand you back over now.
Yeah, get us an hour. Get us an hour on this, guys. At least give us 2 hours on this to tell you what we will show you. Take the system apart. We've been doing this for 5 years, by the way. It's all to do with what's called law of necessity, right? And law of necessity is a legal doctrine, right?
I've used necessity, Rob, by the way.
Yes, when we go to court against the officialdom, they're bringing necessity to the table. Old people, children, economy, defence. They're bringing necessity to the table. What we're not coming in with is a higher necessity. And what you've just done, Rob, that's what you're doing there. They're coming to the table saying, you give us money because we've got to do this. You're saying, no, I'm not giving you money because I've got a higher necessity. Right? For example, I've not paid tax the last 2 years because I said there's a crash coming. And my necessity, higher necessity, is make sure my family survive. I don't trust you bunch of cunts to do it. You know, sorry for swearing there, but I don't trust you guys to do it. Me and my family are better with our money, are better judged to defend ourselves against this crash that's coming, because you guys couldn't want to piss up in a brewery, to be frankly, you know. So that's why I've not paid income tax or any taxes other than VAT for the last 2 years because of that, you know, and it stops them dead, because every court case is based upon necessity. The judge is balancing necessities. And very few people go into a hearing. And I don't even go to court because I do this beforehand in paperwork. I kill them dead with paperwork necessity. I'll ask him to prove higher necessity and stuff, you know. And health and safety. I remember I said years ago, Rob, people when they're talking to somebody in officialdom, you need them to, somebody writes to you, says, a man, my job title such and such, ask them for a copy of their job description, a copy of their bond or insurance policy, and a copy of the company policy, because the company policy mentions health and safety. You then go through the company procedures, ask them for a copy of their quality assurance procedures dealing with the issuance of such and such document, blah, 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 purely from the point of view of health and safety. You nail them. You stop them dead because they won't do it. The courts, when they hold a hearing with you, should hold a risk assessment. Ask them for a copy of it. You're doing what's now called your due diligence. They don't do it.
Rob, just jumping in, absolutely right. When you talked about martial law, how is martial law available? How can Obama just the military take over? It's all down to health and safety. It's all down to health. I call it health, safety, and well-being. I know we're getting close to closing now, Andy. But maybe we could do a show on this because, like Rob says, this is massive, and I know Rob's worked in that industry and come across this stuff for years. Yeah,
that's absolutely brilliant. Thanks so much for your information, guys. And it's always a disappointment to cut you guys off, but of course we'll book you in again. We've got to make way for Dr. Rock tonight, but perhaps we could fit you in on a Tuesday, because Tuesday we can run on to 3 hours, so we might be able to get it all in there. But Dr. Rock's up next, following on with more information about council tax, and we'll be back on Tuesday with Priscilla Una, all the way from Canada, singer, songwriter, and started her own record label, and she's pretty wide awake, so I'm looking forward to speaking to her. And what we'll do is we'll leave you with a little taster of Priscilla's music, and we'll wish you all the best. Stay tuned for Doc, and if the new show doesn't start straight away, just refresh your browser until you can hear Doc Rock. Okay, thanks Rob, and thanks Jason, and thanks to everyone for listening.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys. Thank you. Nice to see you again, Joe. We can catch up again, Rob, shortly, mate.
Yeah, Rob, you've got my Skype details, yeah?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, we'll speak after this if you want. Okay, catch you later, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Not reprimanded. I caused a revolution yesterday.